The Chicago Bulls front office search has become more about just finding the right person for the job. It's about completely modernizing the Chicago Bulls front office structure. If some of the rumors are to be believed, we're going to talk about how the Chicago Bulls could actually hire two of the final candidates. And this is something that I actually speculated on a couple of days ago. Plus, we keep hearing rumors around the Chicago Bulls and some of the free agent acquisitions, even without a new front office in place. This time, hearing about the big man that the Chicago Bulls could target this offseason. We'll talk a little bit about that, as well as who the mock drafts have the Chicago Bulls drafting. All that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Eric Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so, something that I speculated on a couple of episodes ago, in which I talked about the Chicago Bulls possibly hiring both Matt Lloyd and Dave Lewin as well. With him being added to the final list kind of late into the conversation, I just, speculated like, hey, could they actually be thinking about trying to hire both of these guys, getting a little bit ahead of it in regards to that and giving an option to Matt Lloyd of saying, hey, we interviewed Dave Lewin and he could be interested in the GM role. And it seems like that's becoming something that's more being talked about. Initially, I talked about it on the show. Joe Cali also tweeted about it. And then now there have been a couple of articles out about it when it comes down to it. And I think the reason why this is all built around this, right? Casey Johnson talked about on his recent episode how Michael Reinsdorf is open to change that matters in a non-traditional structure in the front office. Typically, the Chicago Bulls have had a pretty straightforward structure, right? You have a president, you have a GM. And it seems like the Chicago Bulls are open to doing more in regards to that, right? I think even if you look at Boston, for example, and Oklahoma City, these are two front offices that use more collaborative front offices. So while you have traditional roles with the labels, the way they act within those roles are completely different. And that's really how it comes down with in a lot. Like some teams don't even have a president of basketball operations. They don't technically have that role. It's for, they have a GM that kind of operates in all those roles, when it comes down to it. So it really comes down to that. But, really looking at Boston and Oklahoma City. Now, we did hear in Michael Reinsdorf's, press conference saying that, we would love to be Oklahoma City. We love to emulate some of the things that they do. And so I think that right now, the Bulls aren't limiting themselves to the old number one and number two model. And it's going to be, and it could be, right? I don't want to say going to be. It could be more of a co-head type thing. And that's how they get things attacked and done. And that could be what the Bulls are looking at in regards to this. Now, I say could be because we aren't in the front office. We don't know exactly what the Reinsdorfs are talking about. Them, and unfortunately, Paxson is involved in this as well. But the benefit of having a non-traditional structure is that you can share the workload, right? So let's say you hire, for the interest of this conversation, you hire Matt Lloyd, you hire Dave Lewin, whatever the titles end up being, let's take that, ball it up, throw it away, right? Whatever the titles end up being or what the titles end up being. But if you have it to where it's like, all right, listen, cool. Dave, you were in charge of coaching staff, development on the court, this type of stuff. Matt Lloyd, you were in charge of, the scouting department, the recruiting, that type of things, going out and getting free agents, or you guys can go out and get, it's that type of thing that the Bulls could look to do. And I'd say this, maybe that is. And, somebody could say that it's too many hands in the kitchen, possibly when you do things like that. But one could say is that the Bulls having a more traditional structure, has that really worked out for them in the last 20 years, right? Like we had the Derrick Rose team before Derrick Rose, which is a scrappy team as well. We all have an affinity for that team. But outside of that, has it really worked, right? And if you don't have a Jerry Krause in place, and that's really because Jerry Krause cared so much about winning for a decade plus, where it was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this team winning. You guys can hate me. I don't give a fuck. We winning though, right? So maybe if you have that non-traditional structure where you share that a little bit and you have kind of more eyes on it and it is a more collaborative thing, maybe you can work that out into where it just ends up being that you have the best ideas, right? And you got to find two people. I think the key thing in that, if you're going to go with a less traditional route in regards to it, I say this, like, you have to make sure that those two guys share at least a vision and how to get there. They respect each other. They want to work with each other. And that's what it could do, right? I think when you look at specifically as well, the Matt Lloyd, Dave Lewin combo, let's look at that combo specifically. So that's what's kind of the rumors built around. It may not, again, I want to say this clearly, right? This would be almost too perfect to happen for the Chicago Bulls. So until it's announced, I'm going to talk about it as speculation and something as a pie in the sky dream that may never actually happen. But let's just talk about it. If it is Matt Lloyd and Dave Lewin, what does it happen? Matt Lloyd, of course, brings the experience. He's worked with the Reinsdorfs. He's in the family to a certain degree, right? Which I do think, say what you will, whether it should or should not matter. I think it does matter to the Reinsdorfs. He has ties to Chicago and the success that he's had as part of Minnesota's front office, right? Then you look at what Lewin brings. He has the Celtics culture that he's worked under, that experience, the analytics, the scouting, and understanding how trends work. He's really forward in regards to how trends are working around the NBA. So I think when you look at it, the Lindsey and Lewin combo could make sense, right? Now, I would also say this, that Bryson Graham also can fit into that with either one of those guys as the young rising executive with experience mode, right? And I think that's what you're looking at for. So I think when you come down to it, having a seasoned exec, right, that's been in the league for a while, that's regardless of the role, that's been around NBA teams for a while, and then the kind of whiz kid, kind of, to, for lack of a better terms, the up and coming, the young guy, the innovative guy, the guy that has a different type of mindset. If you're going to pair two different methodologies together, that would make some sense. You're getting the best of both worlds, the respect of somebody who has been experienced and in front offices for decades plus, that has relationships around the league, and the new kind of young guy that has the new mindset on analytics and stuff like that. So whether it's Lewin and Graham, Lewin and Lloyd, right? Lloyd and Graham, right? Like you can have one of those guys that come down to it. Now, this would be a completely different for what the Reinsdorfs have done. And therefore, I'm not going to act like it's a for sure thing that it does happen, but I think it does raise an interesting, case point for the Chicago Bulls team on how it could help actually we've talked so much about the Bulls have been stuck in purgatory for too long. Doing something this different could not only help get the Bulls out of that purgatory, but also get the Bulls a new modern look with front office, with keeping old school sensibilities with it too, and maybe merge the best of both worlds. Now, eventually, if we're going to talk about some of the downside that could happen in this, eventually somebody usually wants the praise. Right now, if you find two guys that personality mesh and they both care more about winning than who's getting what praise or XYZ, but just typically human nature, eventually somebody is going to want to be acknowledged for what their part of it was it in. And so how long could a front office structure like that actually work together? We'll see, right? Like, and again, that's if it even happens. But I want to throw it over to you guys in regards to this one right now. Hearing that the Reinsdorfs could be open to a non-traditional, where it's not number one, number two model, that it could be two execs leading this thing together, that could be co-presidents or whatever else it is. Who are the two names that you think would fit in regards to that? Is it Matt Lloyd and Dave Lewin like I like, or do you think it could go a different way, with some other names in there? Let me know what you guys think on that part down below. And Scott, listen, the people who are saying like hire Scottie Pippen as the head coach or just because shut the fuck up. Like real talk, shut up. Now, the Rondo part of it seems like Rondo could actually be, circling around the Pelicans head coaching job, which a lot of you guys have been bringing up Rondo for a while. And I've been questioning, like, damn, does Rondo even want to get into head coaching? Well, seems like you guys are right on that one. So we'll see what's going to happen. Moving on from that, though, right? Let's talk about the recent rumors that are popping up about Bulls and free agents that they could target. Right now, of course, a lot of people are going to respond and ask themselves, well, how do we know what front office? We don't have a front office. Like, I think at this point, you're just looking at the fact that the Bulls need a center, and these are the centers that are available. So regardless of what the rumors are in regards to players that they could target, these players do make sense because the Bulls need a big man. These are the big men that are available, right? So there have been rumors that popped up over the last 24 hours in regards to the Bulls with their major cap space could target Jalen Duren, Walker Kessler, or Mark Williams, right? That they could target those guys. And, those guys all make sense to varying degrees. I think we've all kind of speculated on those guys to different degrees in regards to it. Jalen Duren, young, right? But a guy that really made a big leap this season in regards to it. Now, playoff-wise, it's been disappointing for him playoff-wise. Like, right, he just has not had the playoff performance that you would expect based off what he did in the regular season, which has led a lot of Bulls fans to question and say, well, dang, do we want a guy that's going to shrink in the playoffs? Here's the thing that I always say in regards to that. You got to get to the playoffs first. On top of that, this is Jalen Duren's first playoffs, right? In regards to like the team being this good. So I'm not going to knock, him for doing it once. Like we've seen sometimes players in their first postseason don't really have the type of performance that you would expect because postseason basketball is very much so different. But the Pistons as a whole, to be honest with you, have been largely disappointing as well. So, I'm not going to put that just on Jalen Duren. But what you're getting in Duren, at least during the regular season, is a player that averaged 19.5 points per game, 10.5 rebounds on 65% shooting. He also averaged 2 assists per game and almost a block per game as well. Now, one of the downsides is that, Jalen Duren does protect the rim, not in block shot fashion. He does protect the rim as far as, deterring shots at the rim, but he's only averaged over a block per game once in his career. That was in 2024-25. But this is a guy that doesn't take threes. He's a modern-day big man. If you have a point guard that can get him the ball, he's going to do those things. Why would the Detroit Pistons let him go, though? That's the question that we all have to ask here, and I don't see it happening. Like, I speculated at the beginning of the season that maybe they could do that. The Pistons are also a team that don't like to pay the luxury tax. You're going to have to overpay for any of these guys. I want to be clear here. Just about anyone, maybe Mark Williams, you won't. You're going to have to overpay for just about any of these guys. But the leaps that Jalen Duren made defensively and offensively this season were noticeable. Now, it has not maintained in the postseason, and that's where you're getting into some of the questions in regards to that. And I was wrong. This isn't actually his first postseason. Last year was his first postseason. I forgot about that. He did play in the postseason. They did play in the postseason last year as well. So, you're looking at that when it comes down to it. Now, playoff shrinker. Last year, he averaged 65%, and his regular season stats were basically the same as his postseason stats in 2024-25. This year, he's only averaging 10, almost half of what he averaged as far as, shots and 2 less rebounds per game in the playoffs, which drastically is a concern there. I don't think the Pistons let him go. I think that even if you were to kind of max him out and offer the most money to put pressure on the Pistons and their books, they're probably still going to match it, figure out the rest of it later. But if there is some wiggle room in there to where you can lure him away from the Detroit Pistons, cool. I mean, do it, right? The guy that we've talked a lot about the entirety of this year also was Walker Kessler with the Utah Jazz, right? We've been talking about that literally since the season began, just about. We've been talking about the potential of the Bulls making a move for Walker Kessler. And the thing with Kessler is this, right? We don't know exactly what the Utah Jazz are doing. They just drafted Jaren Jackson Jr., who does not like to play center. They do have Yusuf Nurkic. They still have Kyle Filipowski in there, all those type of things. And could they get a different center this offseason? That's the question that you have to ask when it comes down to it. But it seems like the Utah Jazz are finally ready to make that pivot from being a team that's tanked for the majority of the last 3 or 4 years to actually trying to win and compete for basketball games. Now, for what it's worth, Walker Kessler in the 5 games that he played last year, 14 points, almost 11 rebounds on 70% shooting from the field and 75% shooting from 3, which, that definitely wasn't going to be maintainable. That's a crazy amount of shooting, even though he was only taking, 1.5 per game. But I think that Walker Kessler has more game than what he's shown. Now, I know that, he's only played over 70 games once, played over 60 games twice, right? But some of those are the Utah Jazz holding people out. So, I don't know how many of those were legitimate injuries from him versus the Utah Jazz maintaining their tank over those years, which is the question that you have to ask. This season, of course, was a legitimate injury. He had to have the surgery, I believe, on his shoulder. But that's not anything that's new there. I think when it comes down to Walker Kessler, that's, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same injury that Ayo Dosunmu had in the same surgery. So you're going to make 100%. You're expected to make 100% recovery from that shoulder surgery. So not too worried about that. Will the Utah Jazz want to match on Walker Kessler? That's a risky run with any of these guys. But Kessler as a defender, is really good. When you look at the defensive numbers, how he switch outs on players is something that's not talked a lot about with his game. Walker Kessler is a legit defender and one of the best shot blockers in the league. He's averaged over 2 blocks per game every year of his career, but this season where he averaged 1.8, but it was only 5 games. He was probably going to get over those 2 blocks. For his career, he averages 2.4 blocks per game, so basically 2.5 blocks per game. That's big for especially a team in the Chicago Bulls. They need rim protection. That's really big for a Bulls team. So that can make some sense for the Bulls also. Then you look at the other player mentioned, Mark Williams. This is the one player, right, that if you were to sign Mark Williams in this offseason and put money on the table for him so you have a starting caliber center that plays the style that you want, I'm not mad at, but I am so concerned about Mark Williams and betting on him to be your center of the future. I would not want to bet on Mark Williams to be the center of the future. The injuries have just been too plentiful for him. He had a really good season last year. 11.7 points per game, which was really good. Not his highest, but, he played on a different team, an actual winning team. 64% from the field. He also averaged eight rebounds per game, right under a block per game. When you look at his career, he averages over a block per game for his career. So chances are he's going to be a solid rim protector in that. A guy that can get up and down on the floor, a lob threat as well. Another guy that you don't have to worry about taking threes, right? He's going to live off the point guards and the guards that you have creating for him, which is all really good. I don't hate that at all, right? The last season was the first season that he's played over 50 games. He's never played a season over 50 games. You look at his rookie year, 43 games. His second year, 19 games. His third year, 14 games. Last year, 60 games he played. So, that's trending up. I just wouldn't want to bet on Mark Williams to be my center of the future. If you sign him, I would still say I hope that they drafted another center at number 15 at minimum. Like if you drafted Christian Nick Jr., right, a guy like that, I think that's perfect. And you have Mark Williams for 2 or 3 years. And then hopefully Sanok Jr. is ready to take over at that time, and then you can move on from Mark Williams. That's what I personally would do, right? So, that's just my thought process on it. I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in Mark Williams being my center because of the injury thing, but I do think it makes some sense that the Chicago Bulls would make take a look at all these big men, right? And I think they all bring something different. Jalen Duren brings the physicality, the rebounding, all that type of old school big man presence that you need, and the Chicago Bulls have not really had for years. He brings that. Kessler and Williams both bring elite shot blocking. Mark Williams is more of a rim runner than Walker Kessler, even though Walker Kessler is a legit, lob threat as well. And we know that the Bulls do need front court help. There's no doubt about that. So, they need that, but they also sit in a place where they could draft that so they don't have to spend recklessly. So, we'll see what happens in regards to that. The Bulls have a lot of tools at their disposal to try to add a center of the future and a center of right now as well, if that's what they want to do. We just got to see if they're going to be aggressive enough to go out there and get it. But we still don't know who the hell the exec is that's going to be running the show to even say that that's going to be a thing. So let's see what's going to happen in regards to that. I hope that it does, and we'll see what's going to happen there. With that said, I also want to take a look at the mocks real quick, right? Before we get up out of here, probably cover this a little bit more going into the weekend. But when you look at it, I'm looking at 2 specific mocks, right? We're looking at Sam Vecenie and what he has mocked going to the Chicago Bulls. And, and we'll see what ends up happening there. But I think overall, whether the Bulls stay at number 9, I think everybody, when you look at all these mocks, the one thing that you're seeing is that so much of this for the Bulls comes down to best player available. And that really seems like the place that they should be and that they're going to be in this is looking at best player available. And we'll see. So we're looking at Sam Vecenie and Jeremy Woo of ESPN, Sam Vecenie's of The Athletic, and their recent mock drafts and what they have the Chicago Bulls doing. So for what it's worth, Jeremy Woo has the Chicago Bulls drafting Braden Burries at pick number 9. Now, we've talked a lot about this. Braden Burries brings a lot of what you get from Trey Jones next to Josh Giddey, but a player that has more legit size, right? With that wingspan and stuff, more willingness to be a scorer as well, right? And shooter, because I think that's something that sometimes, even with Trey Jones being as good as he is, he does pass up 3-point shots because he's not really a scorer. He can score, right? Braden Burries isn't going to have that problem. He is a legit 3-level scorer and a passing threat and a really good point of attack defender. And I would love Braden Burries on the team. Rather than even taking the fit next to Josh Giddey out of the equation, I just think that Braden Burries makes a lot of sense for the Chicago Bulls there. And then at number 15, he has the Bulls drafting Jaden Quantance. Now, this is a guy that it's a lot of different speculation around it. I wouldn't mind the Chicago Bulls because I think that if JQ actually stays healthy, that's a lottery level talent. If it wasn't for his health, he would be a top 10 pick. No doubts about it, right? Why he's falling is because of the questions of his health. Now, the Bulls are going to take a look at those medicals, as every team is going to, before they make a decision. I'm not mad at Quantance at number 15. I prefer Christian Nick Jr., but I'm not mad if the Bulls do that because it would be betting on a player that has really, truly elite upside, right? And that's just what it comes down to, is the pairing of both those, the guard and the big there. You get your guard in Braden Burries, you get your big in Quantance, and I think that just makes sense for the Chicago Bulls, right? So that's what Jeremy Woo has the Chicago Bulls doing. I think that would be a really strong draft for the Chicago Bulls if you're going to end up being able to bring that in. But then you look at Sam Vecenie, what he has the Chicago Bulls doing. He actually has the Chicago Bulls drafting Ade Mara at number 9, right? Because he doesn't feel like Amara is going to be lower than that. Marv, by most projections, starting to rise up and be a top 10 pick by most mocks as well. So that makes sense. The Bulls get a big man that I still think I have some questions about his foot speed, those type of things, but his passing's legit. He understands his role really good. His strengths are really, really good when it comes down to it. And so if the Bulls were to go that route, that's great, right? So, you have a look at that one. That's not a bad thing. And then he also has the Bulls drafting Cameron Carr at pick number 15. Now, here's the thing. Cameron Carr has all the tools to be a legit 3-and-D weapon in the NBA. A legit 3-and-D weapon. It depends on how you look at, could he have a similar trajectory like what you think about like Mikael Brown or something like that? Cameron Carr could have that. I like Cameron Carr. I don't love Cameron Carr when it comes down to it, but when you look at 6'6", legit size, the long arms, the physicality is something that sometimes he doesn't, but he's still a really good defender. He is a guy that shows up into that. He's going to have to put on weight at the next level, though. Really, really big weight if he's going to want to be that true wing 3-and-D defender that can be elite in that area. But I'm not mad at the Chicago Bulls getting those picks done, right? So, when you look at it, it's about the combo, right? And I think that's what you do at number 9 and number 15. If you stay there, if you end up moving into the top 4, then things change drastically there, right? Which, listen, we are 9 days away from the draft lottery. 9 days away from the draft lottery. I cannot wait, y'all. I cannot wait. So that way we can stop speculating. That's what I'm really about to get in my draft bag very heavy too when we get into that, because we got a lot of stuff to cover when we get into that. But overall, I'll say this, right? Guard and big, I think, is what you're looking at in this draft. It just depends on where and when you take those guys. And so if that's what the Bulls are hoping and angling for, that's the right place to take into this. And I think with the Bulls and, the best player available is probably what the Bulls need to do regardless, is take the best player available. We do not have, when people get to talking about, well, we need a big, we need this over that. You know what we need more than anything? Talent. That's what we need more than anything. And so, find that talent wherever you can and let the chips fall where they may after that. And we'll see where the Bulls fall in regards to that. But let me know what you guys think down below on all of the stuff that we talked about today. Like, how do you feel about the draft? What's your best pairing at number 9 and number 10, the pairing of the two? And no, for those that are saying draft 2 big men, stop that. Like, come on, let's stop the nonsense. But with that said, man, if the Bulls are serious about changing their direction, they have a keen opportunity to do that, both on the roster and in the front office. We talked about the non-traditional way that the Bulls could build out this front office. Then let's go out and find a way to build a solid team where the traditional or not, right? So let me know what you guys think on all that down below, man. Make sure you guys are staying locked in with this. Hit that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you're subscribed. Some people think that they are. Make sure you guys like the video as well. Hit that notification bell if you never want to miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.